They say America was built on freedom, on dreams, on unshakable ideas. But what if I told you it was almost built around a single stone? A stone placed in silence, meant to guide the entire nation, meant to be the true center of America. But then it disappeared. No one looked for it. No one asked why. And when it was finally found, it was too late, because what this stone once meant was no longer allowed to exist. Welcome to another untold tale from Historia Unseen. My name is John, and I'll be your voice through this forgotten chapter. Let's uncover the mystery together. It was not gold, not a crown, not a sword. It was just a stone. But that stone was meant to be the center of the most powerful country on earth. People walk past it every day. They don't see it. They don't even know what it means. But back in 1804, this small object was supposed to be America's heart, its compass, its anchor to the universe. So why did the leaders abandon it? Why did it vanish? As if it never mattered. And who brought it back? Welcome to another buried chapter from Historia Unseen. I'm John, your voice for this journey. Let's go back to the very beginning. The year was 1801. The United States was still young, fragile, unsure of its place in the world. 13 states had formed a nation, but everything else was a gamble. In the middle of this stood a man with big dreams. Thomas Jefferson. He wasn't just a politician. He was a scientist, a philosopher, and more than anything, he believed in order. Maps, stars, time. He believed that a country must know exactly where it stands if it wants to lead the world. And for that, you need a line, not a border, a meridian, a line so perfect it could divide east from west, a line that didn't belong to Europe, but belonged to America alone. So Jefferson chose a spot, a place in Washington, D.C., not far from the White House, not far from the Capitol, a flat piece of land where one small stone would change everything. They called it the Jefferson Pier. It wasn't much to look at, just a marker, a block of stone pressed into the earth. But it meant everything. From that stone, Jefferson wanted to build the world's next prime meridian, one that didn't rely on London or any old empire. He wanted a new beginning, for a new world. Surveyors came. Mathematicians measured every inch. They marked the line, north to south, and they placed that stone right on the edge of the future. Jefferson's plan was bold, but it was silent. There were no grand speeches, no public celebrations, just a quiet placement of a marker, and a hope that one day the world would align itself with it. But America was not ready. Not yet. In the years that followed, things changed fast. New cities rose. New problems came. Wars began. Presidents changed. And Jefferson's dream started to fade. People forgot about the stone. Maps didn't mention it anymore. The monument he hoped would stand above it wasn't even started until decades later. And when it finally was, the stone had vanished, buried under grass, or moved, or lost. No one knew. Some said it never mattered. Some said it was never real. But those who understood Jefferson's vision knew better. They knew that stone was not just a piece of rock. It was a statement that America didn't need to follow the old world's path, because it could make its own. Years passed, generations changed, and the marker stayed buried in silence, until one day, a man digging near the monument felt something solid under his foot. It wasn't metal. It wasn't trash. It was stone. And on its surface, words had been carved. Position of Jefferson Pier erected December 18th, 1804. The heart had been found again. But the question now was, why was it buried in the first place? And who decided it should never be seen? Thomas Jefferson was not a man who left things to chance. He believed in patterns, in reason, in the sky above. While others saw land, he looked up and saw a map written in the stars. Jefferson believed that time, space, and power could all be measured and controlled. But for that, America needed a line that would start from the ground and stretch all the way into the heavens. A meridian that would guide every map, every clock, and every decision made by this new country. Today, the world follows the Greenwich Meridian in England. But Jefferson didn't want America to follow anyone. Not Europe, not the British, not their systems. He wanted a new prime meridian, one that began in Washington, D.C. And so, in 1793, even before becoming president, he started planning. He studied astronomy. He examined Earth's tilt. He talked with surveyors and engineers. And when he became president in 1801, he had the power to finally do it, to draw a line of his own. The Jefferson Meridian. It would begin at a small marker on the National Mall, run perfectly north and south, and shape the destiny of a rising nation. This was not just science. It was symbolism. Jefferson wanted the world to know that America would set its own time, follow its own stars, and no longer bow to foreign rule. The meridian would be the spine of the new world, and it would start with one stone. But the problem was, Jefferson's America was too young, too unstable, too distracted. While he drew maps and watched the sky, the country was slipping into debt, into divisions, into war. Other leaders didn't understand his vision, or maybe they didn't care. To them, the marker was just a rock, a strange idea, an experiment by a man who was too obsessed with details. And so, after Jefferson left office, his meridian was quietly forgotten. It was never added to official charts, never recognized internationally, never taught in schools. His dream simply vanished, but not completely, because even when people forgot the line, they couldn't erase the idea behind it. The Jefferson Pier, though ignored, still sat there, covered in grass, buried by time, watching as monuments rose around it, watching as America chose other paths. And above it all, the stars still moved, still followed their course, still aligned perfectly with the forgotten line below. Years passed, decades, and no one seemed to notice that the heart of Jefferson's plan was still pulsing just beneath the surface, until one day, someone looked again, and they asked, what if we were supposed to follow this line all along? What if America's true center was never really lost, just ignored? That question would change everything. The sun rose on a cold morning, December 18th, 1804. A small group of men stood quietly near a flat patch of land in the heart of Washington, D.C. They weren't holding flags. There were no crowds, no celebration, only tools, calculations, and silence, because what they were about to do wasn't meant to impress the world. It was meant to shape it. One man stepped forward, a surveyor. His eyes scanned the sky, then the ground. He nodded. Another man lowered the object into the earth. A stone, cut flat, simple, heavy. It was placed carefully. Exactly. No room for error, because this was no ordinary rock. This was the Jefferson Pier, a marker placed on the line Jefferson had dreamed of, a line that ran north to the stars and south to the future. It was more than a starting point. It was meant to be the center. From here, every map would stretch. From here, the capital would expand. From here, America would find balance. The stone's message was quiet, but powerful. It said, this is where it begins. And yet, the country wasn't listening. The marker was set, but nothing changed. There were no new maps, no time zones drawn from it, no government buildings lined up to it. Instead, the city kept growing in its own direction. Different roads, different plans, different priorities. The Jefferson Pier became like a lonely signal, broadcasting into a world that had already moved on. Still, the marker stood, alone, steady, waiting. It saw the grass grow around it. It saw horses become cars. It saw the Capitol rise, and the White House glow at night. But the one thing it never saw was respect, because as years passed, the marker started to dissipate, not through magic, but neglect. Date covered it, footsteps wore it down, and eventually, no one even knew what it was. Tourists walked past it, children played near it, but not a single soul looked down to read the carved words. Erected December 18th, 1804. Jefferson's Meridian. All of it, fading into the noise of history. And then came something that would seal its fate. Forever, a new structure was being planned. A monument. Tall, massive, a symbol of strength. The Washington Monument. It was meant to rise where the marker stood, to become the tallest object in the Western Hemisphere. A a tribute to George Washington, but maybe also a quiet shadow over Jefferson's forgotten line. Construction began, stone by stone, foot by foot, and as it grew, the marker below began to vanish, not by force, but by design. People said, "This is where the country should gather. This is the center now." The Jefferson Pier, too small, too strange, too quiet, so they let it sink into history. But some say the marker was moved. Others say it was destroyed, and a few believe it was never lost at all, just waiting, because the truth, it was still there, buried under grass, ignored by the world, until one day, a footstep hit something solid. Someone looked down, and a name came back from the shadows. Jefferson. The marker had been found again, but the questions remained. Why was it ignored for so long? And who decided to erase it in the first place? It was once meant to be the center of everything, but soon, it vanished like it had never existed. No headlines, no outrage, just silence. The Jefferson Pier, the heart of Jefferson's vision, slowly disappeared beneath the dust of time. It wasn't broken. It wasn't stolen. It was simply forgotten. The world moved on. New streets were planned. New buildings rose. Maps were redrawn. And Jefferson's line was nowhere to be found. The great American experiment had new priorities. Territories to expand, wars to fight, presidents to elect, slaves to free. And the quiet stone marker in the grass was left behind. By the time the Washington Monument began construction in the mid-1800s, most people didn't even know the Jefferson Pier had ever been placed there. It wasn't marked. It wasn't protected. No fence, no sign, no warning. Then something strange happened. During the construction of the monument, engineers discovered that it wasn't sitting exactly on the old meridian. It was off. Not by much, but enough. Enough to raise a question. Was it a mistake? Or was it done on purpose? Some said the ground was too soft where Jefferson wanted it. Others whispered that Washington's legacy was meant to overshadow Jefferson's. Literally, whatever the reason, the Jefferson Pier was no longer in the right place. And soon, it was gone. The stone that once meant so much vanished. No one wrote about it. No one asked questions. No one cared. But that didn't mean it was lost. Because deep underground, it still rested, covered by soil, stepped on by tourists, forgotten by history, until a man named Nathaniel Mickler, a government engineer, was studying maps of the National Mall, and something didn't make sense. Why was there an old reference to a meridian marker that no longer existed? Mickler became obsessed. He searched the archives. He followed clues. He walked the land himself. And then, he found it, buried just a few inches below the surface. Worn, weathered, but still intact. The Jefferson Pier, still standing where it had always been. Just hidden. Mickler had it dug up, cleaned, repositioned, and placed back in its exact original location. He had the new stone engraved, recovered and re-erected December 2nd, 1889. It was a second chance, a quiet victory. But once again, no one paid attention. No ceremonies, no school lessons, no national pride. The marker was there, and yet invisible. And still today, as millions visit the Washington Monument, as they take selfies, as they wave flags, they walk right past it, right over it. And the question remains, was Jefferson's vision simply too big for his time? Oh, did someone make sure his stone would never stand at the center of anything? The stone was back. After 85 years of silence, after being buried in plain sight, the Jefferson Pier had returned to its rightful place. Recovered, cleaned, re-erected. The year was 1889, and for a moment, it felt like Jefferson's forgotten dream had taken a breath again. But that moment was short, very short, because the world still wasn't listening. Nathaniel Mickler had done his job. He had followed the evidence and brought back the heart of Jefferson's vision. But once the stone was placed, once the engraving was finished, the crowds didn't come, the press didn't write, and the government looked the other way. There was no dedication, no history class added it to the curriculum, no plaque to explain its meaning. Just the stone, standing quietly, a few hundred feet from the towering Washington Monument. And once again, it was ignored. Some called it a curiosity. Others called it just a rock. Tour guides skipped it. Maps left it out. Even history books forgot to mention it. The Jefferson Pier had become a ghost, a silent object in the middle of the nation's capital, seen by millions, understood by none. And perhaps that was the strangest part. It was right there, in the open, surrounded by grass and power, because the White House, the Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Washington Monument, all of them stood nearby, all of them symbols of American greatness. And yet, the very point that was once meant to center it all was treated like it didn't exist. People threw frisbees near it. Joggers stepped over it. Children picnicked next to it, never noticing what lay beneath them. The marker never complained, never moved. It simply waited, weathered by time, faded by sunlight, unnoticed. But there was something even more haunting. The Jefferson Pier was more than just a forgotten idea. It was a sign of a choice, America's choice, to not follow Jefferson's line, to not place itself in perfect alignment with the stars, to not build a world around balance and precision. Instead, it built around power. The Washington Monument, standing tall and proud, had taken the spotlight, and the marker, it became its shadow. Today, if you visit the National Mall, you can still find the Jefferson Pier. No guards, no barriers, just stone, carved with words that few stopped to read. Position of Jefferson Pier erected December 18, 1804. Recovered and re-erected December 2, 1889. A quiet sentence for what was once meant to be the loudest idea of all. So the question remains, why does no one talk about it? Was this just history's accident? Or did someone, or something, decide to bury the truth twice? It was supposed to be a beginning, a new line, a new standard, a new world. When Jefferson placed the marker in 1804, he wasn't just marking a spot. He was drawing a line through the very soul of the country, a line that would decide where maps began, where time was counted, and where the world would look when it asked, "Where's the center of America?" This was his prime meridian, but it never became the world's meridian, because just across the ocean, in England, stood another line, the Greenwich Meridian. That's the line the world follows today. That's where time begins, where GPS coordinates start. It's the reason we say GMT. Greenwich Mean Time. So what happened? Why didn't Jefferson's meridian win? The answer is complicated. In the 19th century, as the world became more connected, with ships, railways, and telegrams, nations needed a single, agreed system. One line, one time, one starting point. In 1884, the world's powers met in Washington, D.C. Yes, the same city where Jefferson's stone still stood. It was called the International Meridian Conference. And in that meeting, they made a choice. They voted to make Greenwich, England, the official prime meridian of the world. Not Washington, not Jefferson's Pier, not the American meridian. Even though the conference was held in Jefferson's own capital, his vision was left behind, just like his stone. The vote wasn't close. 22 nations agreed. Only one voted against Greenwich, and that vote came from France. America. America didn't even vote for its own line. They accepted Greenwich, quietly. And so, Jefferson's dream was over. Not with fire, not with protest, but with silence. The world moved on. Every globe made after that year started at Greenwich. Every clock, every time zone, every flight and ship followed the British line. And the marker in Washington, it stayed in the grass. Small, still, ignored. But think about this. What if the vote had gone differently? What if America had stood up and said, "This is our time, our place, our line"? The maps would be different. The time zones would shift. Greenwich would be just another town. And Washington, D.C., would be the center of the world. The Jefferson Pier could have become a global landmark, visited by millions, taught in schools, watched in awe. Instead, it's just a strange little stone, in a park full of giants. But it's still there, waiting, marking a line that no one follows. but one that still exists. A line that could have changed history, but never got the chance. And maybe that's the real mystery. Why didn't America fight for it? Why didn't Jefferson's vision become reality? And who made sure it wouldn't? The stone still stands. Unnoticed, unprotected, unknown. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shine. But it holds a secret. A secret that stretches from the ground all the way to the stars. Jefferson's marker was never just about location. It was about control, identity, independence. It was a message. We don't follow the old world. We create a new one. But that message was buried. And now, the question is why? Some say it was just forgotten, that the stone had no real meaning, that it was only a small part of a bigger plan, and nothing more. But others aren't so sure. They believe something else happened, something intentional, a quiet decision made by powerful men to let Jefferson's vision fade, so another story could rise. Think about it. Why would a nation so obsessed with freedom, with breaking away from Europe, allow itself to follow Britain's line? Why would the marker be placed, then hidden, then rediscovered, and still ignored? Why did the Washington Monument shift away from it, just enough to break the alignment? And why, after all this time, do schools still not teach about it? Even now, you can walk right up to it. No one stops you. There's no God, no explanation, just stone and silence. It's almost as if someone wants it to be forgotten, not destroyed, not removed, just invisible. And that's what makes it so chilling, because in a city built on meaning, on symbols, on secrets, this one stone may be the most honest of them all. It never asked for fame, never demanded attention. It just waited. Through storms, through wars, through generations, it stood there, watching America grow, and wondering, why was I left behind? Maybe it was too early. Maybe it was too different. Or maybe it was too powerful. A single line that could have changed the world, but was erased before it even began. So the next time you visit the National Mall, look down. Look past the crowds, past the cameras, past the noise. You might just see it. The Jefferson Pier, still standing, still waiting, still holding a truth that America was never ready to face, and maybe never wanted to. Clapperboard, end of series.